Part 1 of the season finale is awesome. It was very well done, and I will get into what was very awesome about it in a little bit. The whole premise of the episode is that the writers find out the location of the King of Dragons. In fact, what it is, the King of Dragons is a Titan-winged Dramillion. So the writers they fly over to Dramillion Island in hopes of getting this dragon and protecting it from Johan, so that he can't get it. What they don't know is that they find out pretty soon that Johan, along with Krogan and the Flyers, are already over on that island, and so now it comes down to the writers splitting up into two groups, with Hiccup, with Astrid Fishlegs, along with Spiteloud, who joins in to take care of the Flyers to protect that dragon, which leaves Snotlout and the twins to deal with the ships. So the second half of the episode is just is packed with action and some intense flying scenes and battles and a good and awesome dragon reveal, and ultimately, with all their efforts, the writers end up failing to protect the Dramillion. The Flyers capture it, and just as Hiccup is about to go after them, Spiteloud says that they have to rescue Snotlout and the twins from a sinking ship, which I'll get into later. Of course, they do that along with rescuing Gruffnut. They all fly to try to catch up with the Flyers so they can get the dragon again, only to find it abandoned in the sea and mortally wounded. So after taking it back to Defenders of the Wing, Fishlegs points out that that its skeleton is different from the remains that make up Vanaheim, which means that it's not the King of Dragons. Which it turns out that the reason for that dragon is so that its own unique firepower can be used on the lens to change the map to reveal the actual location of the King of Dragons, the real King of Dragons, and it's on Berserker Island. Which then we transition over to Berserker Island, where Dagger gets the news of the approaching enemy ships, and it ends. So, the final battle is going to be fought on Berserker Island over the Bewilderbeast. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of excited to review that episode next. There's a lot of surprises in there that makes you go, oh my Thor, they did that? And like, what? I mean, okay. But before I get to that episode, I'll talk about this episode. The middle of the episode, it was split into two parts. It was that focused on Hiccup's group and the twins. The twins end up rescuing Gruffnut, reluctantly, I might add. And he just convinces them to go onto the ship because he left something there, which turns out to be its treasure. And he springs a trap which causes the ship to sink. That's pretty much all you need to know. So what is there are some minor there's some minor nitpicks about this episode, but they're just so very common because they've appeared all throughout this Netflix series. You know, the fire assets, they appeared a little too stock-like. There could have been some more animation on the waves and ripples for when the ships are sailing, and you know, I think some of the voice acting could have used another take, but like I said, it's common in this series. There's really no point in trying to bring it up, and besides, this episode was more good than bad. Everything, a TV series, an episode, or even a movie is going to have good and bad moments in it. It's just, what's there more of, good or bad? There was more good in this episode, and there were 3 good shots that I liked. One was, of course, in the middle. In the middle with the fight, trying to protect the Titan Wing Dramillion. And so far, most of the flying scenes have kind of just been just standard cinematography, something we've seen throughout the episodes of this series, and even from the Cartoon Network series. But what did stand out in this battle was that after the dragon is hit with a dragon root tipped arrow, is that you see its POV, and it's this very dizzying, glitchy, chromatic effect. I mean, I really liked the use of the green and magenta layers, and as well as the blurriness. It just really and twitchiness. It does really put you in this dragon's mindset. And the other two, one comes at the very beginning of the episode. I just really loved the build. I really loved the build-up of the King of Dragons map. It starts inside the Dragon Eye, where we're seeing Toothless through the lens, and as he powers up his plasma, the first lens ignites, and then the camera starts tracking backward. And one by one, the lenses, they all start lighting up. We get some electricity elements. The glyphs start layering up on top of each other and fading in with a whole bunch of colors until the camera just finally tracks out of the Dragon Eye, and the Dragon Eye lens and Toothless are kind of lined up perfectly. I like shots where from time to time they'll just have something of importance, or something directing our eye right to the center of the frame. I like what it does, and it kind of gives this moment a very whimsical feeling, something that is just not out of place in this franchise. And my third favorite shot is just like the polar opposite of that whimsical moment, and it comes at the end, and it's when the writers find the abandoned Dramillion. It's in the center of the frame, but it's just very sad, and it's just very sad and dreary. You got gray clouds that just go on for miles. Ray of light that passes through parting clouds that just directing us towards the Dramillion, and below it is just a gray sea that also goes on for miles. Again, and the music, it just really drives that sadness home. It is just that was so very well done for a very sad moment. And speaking of sad moments, the moment when the Dramillion the Dramillion gets captured, when it gets hit by the harpoon and just falls off the cliff, I just felt myself getting chills from it. Because I was just not expecting to see this happen in the series. And this kind of brings up something. In movie 2, we don't see Drago's Bewilderbeast pierce Volka's Bewilderbeast. It's implied because it cuts immediately just before it happens. But we know it did. But in this series, we see this harpoon not only fly towards this dragon, but we actually see it pierce it, and it's important to note that this is a television series, mostly marketed towards kids, and it actually showed a dragon getting pierced by something sharp, which they didn't, and they didn't show anything like that in the second movie. So this series is kind of really pushing the envelope into what we can see, or what they can now show, not only kids but even teenagers, or at least what's acceptable. Which I'm actually glad they put that in. I mean, me and Tyler, we've been saying of how we wanted to kind of them to up the ante on all these dark moments, and I felt like this was actually the best moment to use that. I mean, you didn't see it coming, and it just left you stunned and just gave you chills when you saw that dragon just fall and bounce and roll off the cliff. And also another major point of the episode is that a lot of the plot threads from the previous season and even this current season are now coming back. Of course, one being Gruffnut, that's the obvious. The other is the Dramillions. They weren't just a new dragon species just for the sake of it's a new season. They actually were very important. The last season that did that was season 4 with the Submaripper. That wasn't just a new dragon. That actually became relevant later on in the finale. Same thing with this. So I wish I probably should have seen that coming. But you know, what's done is done. And of course, there's also the moment. I did deliberately skip over this in the summary because it was something that needed to be talked about. Is that after the writers find out the location of the Dramillion, Spitelout arrives on the edge to announce that Stoic is still alive, but his condition is getting worse, and he comes with the news that the council voted Hiccup on as acting chief. This adds a lot more intensity to what's kind of already high stakes game, because he's ordered to go back to Burke to lead his people, and I'm sitting there wondering, oh my god, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna go back to Burke and have the writers just try to go to Dramillion Island to try to protect it? But it doesn't. But that dramatic plot point doesn't really go too far, because immediately, you know, Hiccup is already at the mindset, since I'm chief, that means I don't really have to follow orders, so I'm the one who gives the orders, and I say we're going to Dramillion Island. So maybe it didn't end up with Hiccup going back to Burke. But it doesn't. But it does show Hiccup, you know, taking a little bit of chiefly duties, because this is something that this series has actually been giving him practice for, being the leader of a group, a leader of essentially a small village, and so this was kind of important for him to really come into his own as a chief. And it's also the moment when, you know, all the writers and even Spitelout agrees it was a very good moment, and I'm actually kind of glad that it didn't drag on too long. And you know, that's all that I can say about this episode. Yeah, can't wait to review. I can't wait to review the next episode, and like I said, there's a lot of surprises in that. But before we get to that, DreamWorks, you know what's coming. Release the discs. I know I've been saying this for 12 episodes now, but you know how to get me to stop. Same thing for releasing the soundtrack. And show the Night Fury babies. Alright everyone, now if you'll excuse me, I have to prepare for battle.